Hello. I'll be talking today about Chapter 3, Looking Away and Seeing Too Much from James Elkin's book, The Object Stares Back. What made me choose this chapter is that I'm really working hard as I get older of trying to change the way or how somehow find different perspectives of way of seeing things. I'm trying to do what Duchamp says to do and to look into the essence of things a lot more. And so this chapter appealed to me quite a bit. I'll try to make this as brief as I can because there was a lot to go through. Elkins provides us a paradox here of our ability to see everything but retain very little of what we see or fully understand or comprehend it in a way that's in a way that's helpful to us to fully grasp the experience. He provides examples from the readings of from the writings of French surrealist and intellectual Georges Bataille. Bataille states that we can't see. There are three things that we can't see completely. That would be the sun, the genitals, and death. And I wonder if number two is. I know he had a bit of a eroticism bias, so I wonder if that's not painted somehow. But I'll get into that later. Some of the examples he provides, especially with the sun, how we can only see what we're allowed to see, because looking at the sun physically hurts. We can only look at it for just maybe a few seconds before pain sets in, which we can't be done. And I was reading through that part, and I wondered if maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. Perhaps we should focus more on what the sun affects. I think that maybe you could make the argument that's more or less what we should be looking at when it comes to the sun. But we could talk about that later. He also brings up the idea about how we look, our vision. They really gets into how we see, like the physicality of seeing, how on the peripherals, it becomes elongated and stretched out. That we don't see everything straight ahead, which is it's making me want to see, really pay attention to how I look at things now. The other part that Bataille talks about is that we can't see is genitals, and he brings up some great examples of the nude in art and how the nude can be somehow dehumanized to be more of an object than it is a real person. And it made me wonder about when I was working from the nude, for my BFA. I always looked at it, and it made me wonder like how I looked at it, because I always looked at it as more of like a social contract where the model's safety is in the artist's hands and comfort. There's somewhat of a social contract happening. So it made me think about how I see the nude figure. He brings up an interesting point with using the example of Origin of the World by Courbet. How just the way genitalia is portrayed there. It's almost it's almost like an aggressive attack. I was always surprised that that painting wasn't more scandalous than, say, Manet's Olympia, for instance. But it does bring. It was always a very interesting painting to me because, quite frankly, Courbet saying this is where we come from, but. Bataille is going a little further here, and Elkins as well, saying, actually Elkins says describes it as a tug on my attention. I am aware of a force as if something were pulling on my eye sockets, turning them away or else pressing them in a place that they are compelled to see. It's as if I am no longer entirely master of my own eyes. There is somewhat of a pulling discomfort. We're both attracted to and ashamed of. With these factors pulling on us, we don't necessarily see. In a way, Bataille is correct, because we don't necessarily see them the way they're probably supposed to be seen, or considered the way they're supposed to be considered, because there's always some sort of almost a bias, a personal bias painted over that. So I took a lot out of that, as well as and then he gets into death. It is tough seeing death, because as it's supposed to be seen. It's much more. You see paintings in art that are in art history that deal with death so much more comfortably and around it, as if it's more of an intellectual concept than a reality. Such images as "Death in Man" by Egon Schiele, where death is over his shoulder, holding his hand at all times, or "Death in Life" from Klimt, where death is on the outside of this sublime, comfortable world waiting for us, and you get that same feeling in Vanitas paintings, or paintings of Memento Mori, which are not necessarily about death, but more destiny. But when we're shown images of shock and great displeasure, such as Judas slaying Holofernes by Janilewski, or The Death of Marat, where death is in front of us, then it becomes a reality. It's something. There's a finality to death. That we're not going to come back from that, and hopefully, not as painful as the Chinese executions that Elkins provides for us. But we're confronted with either. He's also saying we're also confronted with three kind of images. It could be either images of happiness and inconsequentialness, or boredom, or the everyday or the mundane, or images of great intensity, whether they be pleasurable or completely horrible. Even in death, we're not going to take death for everything it is, because again, we're not able to see everything it is, because we have such an emotional attachment to what it could do to us someday. But this is an extremely interesting chapter. I plan on reading this a few extra times. Anyway, well, thank you very much.